Hi, so you are joining us today because you have a curiosity about accelerated waste solutions. This is a wonderful brand, and we have Todd here with us today to talk to us about what they offer for franchisees and what they offer as a business. It is one of the more unique ones that we have because you do get two businesses in one, and which Todd will explain here as we go on throughout our webinar today. But to begin here, our agenda is who we are, Todd and I, what our backgrounds are, and what our roles are to help you potentially looking at franchise concepts and looking at accelerated waste solutions. The brand business overview, what franchise are looking for, should I work with a consultant, is franchising right for you? Because sometimes it isn't, and how to get awarded, and what is the timeline. So my name is Talanda Sideri, and I'm a senior franchise business consultant or coach at the Franchise Consulting Company. My website is thefranchiseeducator.com, and I've been doing this over 12 years. As a coach, I've been doing it about 6 years. Before that, I was at Rhino 7 Franchise Development. And before all of this, former franchisee of 2 franchise concepts, business to consumer brands, service brands, very similar to accelerated waste, which are wonderful industries. I'm sort of the owner of Sideri Studio Photography. I keep it as sort of my other side of my brain for the creativity. And before all of this, I was in the marketing department at Sherwin-Williams in Cleveland, Ohio. So if you want to connect up with me, you can click here, my LinkedIn. And a fun fact, I have used this in a few of the slides that I do for different concepts. So if you've watched a few of those, this is going to be familiar to you. But if not, my father used to manage a McDonald's back in, I think it was like the late 60s, mid 60s, late 60s. And he was offered a franchise and he turned it down. And it's one of the things we kind of get on his case about. So it was interesting that I then got into this industry. So we have Todd Leonard. If you could tell us about yourself and about what you do here.
Sure, Todd. It's great to talk to everyone. I've been a franchise, I could say, kind of been raised in franchising.
Yeah.
So I've been doing this for about 20 years. Currently, I'm the director of franchise development for Accelerated Waste Solutions. I spent time both on the operation side and on the development side of franchising over those years with companies like Executive Home Care and 7-Eleven. Fun fact, kind of to Landa's story, my father started a video store franchise back in the late 80s. Basically, we were going to crush Blockbuster and started that out. And so I grew up with franchise agreements on my kitchen table. So I got to know the industry in and out and just kind of fell into it after that.
Nice. All right. So franchise agreements on your kitchen table would be like stacks of paper.
Oh, yeah. Well, back then they were called UFOCs.
Yes.
And it was, when we did our research on it, we looked at some of the best brands that were out there and tried to do it ourselves to save the legal expense. Unfortunately, back then lawyers were still getting $200 an hour to do franchise agreements. So tried to cut a couple of those corners and steal some of this stuff from actually like McDonald's and Hilton and some of the others when we were putting it all together.
Yeah, and that's bringing up that franchise agreement. One of the things I always tell clients is whether you're looking at a 7-Eleven, a McDonald's, accelerated waste, everyone has a franchise disclosure document, which then turns into the franchise agreement. And, we both have information on FDDs and can help people understand what that is. So.
Absolutely.
Okay, so as a consultant, that is where I come in. I typically work with clients on a front end basis. We're very similar to executive headhunters. Realtors for business is another term. My kids hear me say so much at executive headhunters that now they repeat almost what I say. But we are paid by the franchisors. And this is, a key part to the whole thing because we're here to help. We're here to provide a free service to the clients. And, you guys are never charged a fee nor do anything so far as the fees from accelerated waste or any franchisor increase to cover those costs. So it's just very similar to that headhunter analogy. We provide the research, information, resources. So a lot of times I'll get people say to me, well, I'm just going to go and do some research before I talk to you. And I have to try to explain that, well, that's what we do for you so that you don't feel as overwhelmed and that we can sort some of this out together and work as a coach and client together on this. And so we have a lot of resources that we can provide too. So my role, determine if business ownership in franchising is a viable option. Sometimes franchising isn't for everyone, or sometimes they're not ready. So we can sort of outline, maybe some goals that they need to work on before they might be ready to really look at it. We thoroughly analyze their unique goals, skill sets, provide a curated list of potential options. I think that's important to understand in some of this, is that some people will like something just because it's known, and that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a good match for them. We advise and consult on all aspects and due diligence of the investigation. Investigation is always a funny word. I always like to say it's more like casually dating. Investigation sounds so serious, and it's an awarding process. They get to talk to you, Todd, and learn everything that there is about the business, and provide financial and legal recommendations. And then the role of the franchisor is that actual investigation. Conduct the investigation process to learn all aspects of the business model, provide financial information, whether it's from the investment side, how much you can make, everything on marketing, how am I going to get clients, how do I handle, the trucks, or, what have you. And you guys assist with all validation calls with current franchisees. Anything, I leave that point blank there. Is there anything that you want to add that maybe I missed that you guys do, or did that kind of cover it for the investigation?
So it covers a lot of it. I think one of the things, even going back to the consultant role, so many people are looking at businesses and don't know where to start, or
Right.
are often looking at things like you mentioned, that are ultra sexy or exciting or
Right.
trendy, or, hey, I love frozen yogurt, so I'm going to own a frozen yogurt business,
Right.
which financially might be viable, it might not. But from a franchisor side, we enjoy working with the consultants just because they show you things that might fit you that you haven't thought of before. So it brings, most people don't wake up in the morning thinking I want a junk removal trash business, but when all the other aspects and
That sounds
the
so
way it operates,
sexy, doesn't
oh,
it?
absolutely. There's kids playing in the sandbox are not saying, hey, someday I'm going to grow up to own a junk removal business. But as they go through and you start to see the makeup of the business
Right.
and the fundamentals, it's something that is very attractive to a lot of people. So it gets some folks in the door that traditionally might not have started their search here.
Exactly. So some common questions we cover during your consultation: pros and cons of franchising, because like anything, there are some cons to it, and sometimes that can really scare people away, or sometimes it's just good to understand what it is so you can deal with it. Is franchise ownership for you? How we conduct that franchise match? What should I be focusing on for business ownership? And I think that kind of just went into what you just said, that sometimes we need to make sure we're focusing on the fundamentals and not necessarily on what's on the outside of it. What are your goals as a client? Because sometimes that can direct you in different directions, from the standpoint, maybe the business that you thought you wanted isn't an option yet, maybe a first business and the second business. So I kind of talk about it like your first house and then your second house. What do franchisors look for? This is important because, like I said, it's an awarding process. When to look at funding. Yeah. What I'll say there is, you need to make sure that you understand fully what you're comfortable investing, and then we can start taking a look at funding options, pre-approvals, and then that will also help understand which concepts to take a look at. So some popular questions and hangups, and without a doubt, I don't know about you, Todd, but every client, this wouldn't work in my market. There's already too much competition. What if an employee or a manager leaves? What do I do then? I've never done, and then you can insert any industry you want. I've never done frozen yogurt. I've never done baking. I've never done, painting, whatever. What if I want out of the business? Because obviously an exit plan is an important thing to understand. I'm not ready to speak with the franchisor yet, Talena, but could you please tell me about, and again, I just like people to understand my role is to match and coach and guide, but the franchisor, Todd's role would be to tell you everything there is about that business model. And the infamous, how much can I make? I do have a blog post that I did about the franchise disclosure document, item 19, because this is a common question. And we'll cover this a little bit further, but how much can I make? Any franchisor is going to be the one to tell you anything about the item 19 and the revenues. And our job, any consultant should not be telling you what you can make. That is a franchisor's job, and they have to stick to the FDD. And then, once you get to validation towards the end of the investigation, those franchisees can talk to you about their personal experience and expenses and profits and what have you. So it can get a little tricky because franchising is guided by the Federal Trade Commission. So I do like to cover that so people can understand, because that's usually the first question I get. Well, how much can I make? Let's start with a few other questions first. So some rules and guidelines, no points to follow. As I just said, only the franchisor can provide all the details of the business model and financials. I really need to say that 2 or 3 times. Investigating a franchise is not making a business decision. I like to really talk about that and take that pressure off the table. It's learning and evaluating. It's casually dating. No one's serious about anybody. If you can follow the process of the investigation, you are more likely to be awarded a franchise. Both sides are interviewing each other. Both sides can choose to respectfully end the investigation if it is not a good fit. And my role is to help you get awarded. So a typical timeline, and I think this helps people kind of visualize out, because sometimes it's easier to start at the end and then work backwards and where you're going to fill in the gaps. We usually start with an initial call with me. If everything kind of sounds good and people are feeling comfortable, we move on to a consultation call, which is where we spend an hour on the phone. There's some documents that we have you fill out to get to know you, from a personality test to a confidential questionnaire. And I build your business model from there. Then I go and do the research, we do matches, and then we set up a call where I introduce you the franchisors that match up with you. And accelerated waste, comes into the play here because it can easily match up with, people that are interested in the fundamentals of your business. Begin investigations with the franchisors. So because of my relationship with those franchisors, I will introduce you to them, and then you guys will get the red carpet treatment because you came through a consultant and not direct. Accept offer from the franchisor. So the investigations can take, goodness, if someone has done this before, if they've owned a franchise in the past, if they started an investigation and they stopped and now they kind of know what to expect. I mean, the quickest I've ever seen is 3 weeks, but I think the average was probably more like 12. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would say probably in that same range, probably that 8 to 12. Just make sure everything gets buttoned up. But as a franchisor, we're not trying to rush through the process because like you mentioned, it is a dating process. So you want to be able to spend some time and get to know people a little bit better. The human element and the people side of the business is often just as important as the fundamentals of the business. So getting to know the candidate, getting to know how they're going to interact with our leadership team and with our business consultants that we have out in the field is also part of that. And it's tough to figure that out in a couple of short weeks. So, usually we want to make sure that process is exhaustive enough that everybody feels really good they're making the right decision at the end.
Right. Right. And, some people get to the point where they get an offer from the franchisor and, they decide it's not for them, or most of the time, if they get an offer, they're excited, because usually if you start getting to that point in the process or the dating process, you're going to know. you start to have a good idea. So, all right. So, okay, Todd, start telling us about accelerated waste and some of the things that you guys can offer business owners.
Sure. So accelerated waste is a newer concept in the franchising space. We've been operating for 12 years as a corporate entity. We've established ourselves nationwide in several markets. But what's really unique about this brand is there's 2 concepts rolled into one. So we have Junk Shot, which is our junk removal brand, and they're out there using our trucks to pick up junk and items that people want to discard and get rid of. We have some amazing technology. We actually have the only patented junk removal app in the world. So we actually filed for a patent. We're awarded that in 2019. So someone can have junk removed from their home by simply taking a picture of it. Our app uses facial recognition technology so that we can evaluate the items, price it, get a price quote back to a consumer, and they can book their job usually in less than 15 minutes. So it saves the consumer from having to make a phone call, which we all know today, a lot of people don't want to make phone calls. So it gives another way for people to do the work. And then we have our doorstep details, which is a really unique concept. We're the only ones franchising this concept right now. It's valet trash and recycling services. So what that is that we target apartment complexes. So if you think about the times you've lived in an apartment and the trash receptacle or dumpster was all the way on the other side.
Right.
You got to walk over there and throw your stuff away. Well, Doorstep Details is a service that we contract with the property owner. So we basically work with real estate investment trusts, property managers, asset holders, where we go to that resident's doorstep, collect that trash 5 nights a week, and dispose of it on site for them. So the residents no longer have to transport trash on their own. So we do that on a contract basis. So typically 3 to 5 year contracts that we'll sign with those property owners. So we don't really even have to sell it to the residents or talk about it with the residents. It's all done through the company that owns the buildings. So for us, it's great because that's what we like to call mailbox money. So essentially the franchisee finds that, signs that contract, 3 to 5 years, they're getting monthly revenue from that contract for the life of that agreement.
And that becomes like, if someone's looking at that apartment complex, it becomes more, they like it better because this is a service that they can offer. So more likely to sign with that apartment complex.
Absolutely. And it's actually the other part of it that's really unique is it's a win-win for even the property owners. So what happens in a lot of those scenarios is we charge the apartment complex or the owner of the building roughly about $10 per month per unit. Most of them upcharge that fee to the residents, so they generate their own revenue by offering this amenity. So even for the property owners, it's something that, we have properties throughout the country where they can take on capital projects because of the revenue that's raised through this service.
Okay.
So it's a much easier sell to those folks for a franchisee, where it's really just maintaining a strong business to business relationship. And we help them identify and target certain locations. We actually have a national database that lets us know which complexes have the services, how long their contract is, also what they're charging the residents. So we were able to really build a nice targeted marketing plan for them that we assist them through, email campaigns, sales materials, and things like that. So we really do help open those doors and kind of get that soft launch conversation set for them.
That's really helpful. All right, next slide.
Sure.
Okay.
So this just kind of touches on what I mentioned before. We started in 2008. We had a really unique story. Our founders were both working. So it's really interesting is they were both working in marketing, and Valley Trash showed up at one of their apartment complexes. They did the math when they got invoiced for the service and said, wow, you know what? There's a ton of money in this. So they set out to start doing it themselves. And they always tell the story when they started in 2008, they failed miserably at their initial launch of it because they didn't have all the tools, all the tactics, all the things other than perseverance and desire. They didn't have the right insurance. They didn't have a lot of the things that they needed to get rolling. So it actually slid into them starting junk removal with a borrowed pickup truck to start building their reputation so that they could afford to do those things. Yep, that's one of their first junk jobs that they had. We've evolved quite a bit since then, but
it looked like from the bottom picture.
And it was interesting because it really enforced and entrenched in them the need for the systems and the tools that went with it. So 2010 realized that they needed to be bigger than just a local business. So they switched our name from Tampa Bay Trash to Accelerated Waste Solutions. And by 2011, we were already operating in several states. So 2012 was when we actually started to develop the app technology. So one of the things that we found, through their experience was customers hated bait and switch. They felt like they get a price quote on the phone and then they'd show up and they charge a different price. And a lot of times it wasn't necessarily the trash company's fault. It's just that the resident didn't accurately depict what they had. So the ability to implement technology behind that was something that they felt there was a strong need for. We did a lot of work for government work for Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac during foreclosure season, when the economy was rough in the late 2000s. And one of the things that they always asked for was documentation. So building the app allowed us to create documentation, send transparency to the customer. So the customer gets an invoice. It has all photographs attached to it. Like, here's a picture of your items before they went in the truck. Here's your items in the truck. This is why we charged you this amount. So it gives a ton of transparency. Plus, for the franchisee, the nice advantage with the app also is you don't have to physically go bid jobs. So when you think about, a business or you have a contractor that you're using, well, they have to take time during their day to come over. We all know folks like to kick tires and say, well, I'm going to get 7 bids before I make a decision. Right. Well, you're spending time and energy that you could be out doing, more targeted marketing. So the app allows us to have folks take a picture, send it to us, get a price quote, And we give them a good ballpark range of what that's going to be without having to physically go on site to give a price quote. So from a labor perspective, it saves the franchisee a ton of time and energy.
So is this how you differentiate from other junk removals, or how do you guys differentiate?
Absolutely. This is a big part of how we differentiate. A couple other things that we do have is, so our trucks are all custom built. So most of the competitors in our space operate out of a 14 cubic yard truck. Ours are 18 cubic yards and they're custom built. So we're able to compete not just with other junk companies, we can compete with roll-off dumpster companies as well. So we take on a lot of commercial work. So we're able to fit more on our truck. And what that also allows us is, from a consumer perspective, and kind of to go to one of your questions earlier of, well, there's other competitors in the market.
Mm-hmm.
Well, listen, anytime you're in a good business, there's going to be competition.
Right.
And it's just a matter of, are you better than them? Do you have more hooks? Do you have more things to draw consumers in? So for us, having that larger truck allows us to be much more price effective in the market, because in junk removal, your pricing is typically based by space on a truck that's taken up. So with our trucks being larger, our quarter truck price is about the same as a half truck price for someone else. So we're able to usually be about 10 to 15% lower cost to the consumer, while still maintaining the same operating costs, or sometimes less than our competitors are.
That's kind of a big point.
It is, and it definitely helps when you're getting into those, those jobs and those sites where, a customer is able to have, one, ease of service, and two, their price is better. You really don't give them an option to look at elsewhere. So they see, hey, the price is better. These guys are efficient and they're uniformed and they're on time and they're cheaper. Okay, that's the direction I'm going to go in. Absolutely. Right. And we put things like that are embedded in our core values and how we operate our support center.
So you do have a support center? Do you have a
we do
call center?
So we do have a fully funded call center, or fully run call center in Tampa Bay. So out of our corporate headquarters, we run a call center that's staffed from about 6 a.m. to 2 a.m. every day. And every call that comes in for the franchisee from a customer, so if somebody finds them online, somebody finds them, through an ad or something else, those calls get transferred and forwarded to our call center. So part of the role of the franchisee, we don't want them to be answering phones all day, sitting, we want them out in the field doing business to business marketing. So we handle those phone calls. And when the call comes in, our team has a script. They've been doing it since 2010. We have a long tenured call center staff, which is also important.
Yeah.
But as we've gone through it, is they're able to take the time to sell to the customer or understand. So one of the things with junk removal, a lot of times our customers are going through a life event, and that's why they're calling us. They're moving, or they've had a tragedy and they have to downsize, or something's happened. So having a call center team that can take 10 minutes to have that conversation if they need to, versus a franchisee who's trying to run between appointments and taking a call on the road, they're not going to be able to give the attention to the call that's always needed. So having that call center really helps us engage the customers better. We have, we're able to keep tracking and KPIs also, so we can test effectiveness. And the nice part for the franchisee is we record all of our calls. So a franchisee will have access to review the transcripts or listen in on the calls for their location.
Very nice.
And also on the nice part is you don't have to hire a receptionist, or you don't have to hire an extra staff member, which is also a nice, obviously, especially as you're starting up, to keep your operating costs as low as we can.
Right.
And try to do and leverage our expertise in ways that benefits the franchisees.
Perfect. Next slide.
Sure. So I touched a little bit on the industries. Doorstep details, there's 20 million plus apartment units nationwide. It's $1 billion market potential, and that's just from the Multifamily Housing Association is saying. Like I said before, it's a win-win for the apartment management and ownership. It creates their net operating income. We do have existing Valley contracts for sale as well. So we have about 90 markets throughout the country that we have.
You have a slide on that coming up here, don't you?
I do.
Okay.
So we do have contracts that are already existing that we can help franchisees acquire once they purchase that market, so they can really build in instant revenue. And then on the junk shot side, it's a huge industry. We've seen through COVID, it's only grown. Folks have, the more time we all spend at home, we look around, we see things we don't want
We're
anymore.
living amongst, that happened to me this morning with the basement.
And you're making home offices, you're doing a lot of things, so
Right.
you're able to move things out. And also too, we do, and there's another slide about this as well. There's also a huge opportunity. We donate, recycle, or repurpose a lot of the items that we collect as well. So we've had a lot of folks, especially through COVID, where they're feeling more philanthropic and want to give things away and donate some things, and we're able to step in and help in those scenarios. We do have national apartment relationships and storage management relationships. So companies like Extra Space Storage, Public Storage, where people tend to leave their stuff, and contrary to some of the TV shows that are out there, those storage lockers usually don't have Picassos and Monets sitting in them. They usually have stuff that nobody really wants. Absolutely. It's stuff that's left behind's typically been abandoned on purpose. So we're able to step into some of those relationships and get the franchisees intertwined and locked in with those folks right out of the gate. And there's also an underground industry called waste consultancy. There's actually companies that go out there and they bid portfolios of properties or even commercial, where they'll include our services in some of those bidding contracts, which get us nationwide contracts.
So you had mentioned here a moment ago, now that people are home during COVID and stuff, how did Accelerated Waste perform during COVID?
So COVID was interesting for us. We did see a little bit of a slowdown right at the beginning of COVID. So I would say that late February, exactly.
Toilet paper was the only thing that we didn't see the slowdown on.
Well, late February, early March, people were a little bit hesitant. I think it was just trying to understand what was going to happen.
What was happening. Uh-huh.
And for us, we kind of stayed firm. We felt that people were still going to need us. So we kept our entire staff working at the corporate level. And once we got through that, probably towards the second half of March, things started to pick up. And the summer was our busiest summer in history. And we continued that progress through the end of the year, and actually it's carried over into the beginning of this year. So last year was by far our best year ever, and this year is on pace to even be ahead of that. So what we've seen is there's definitely a need, and like I mentioned, is what I love about this type of industry, and you mentioned about service industries, is through a lot of these changes in the world, there's a need for these businesses. They're necessities, and
an essential business, that's the coin term now.
It is an essential business. People like to say pandemic resistant is another one people like to use now. I like to say that we thrive in pandemic, we thrive in bad times. Like I mentioned, when we started, the economy was down, the housing market with the bubble was crushed, and things were falling apart, and we launched and we were successful. And so much of it is, folks now are downsizing or they're adjusting, but there's always a need for these types of services. There's always people moving in and moving out. We do a ton of our business in apartments. So with apartments, people are unfortunately moving and changing and adjusting and doing things. And a lot of times what they have, they can't take with them. So they leave it behind, and it needs to be gotten rid of. And oftentimes we're able to put it to a better use or repurpose it for someone else to use.
I think there's a lot of people that might like that point, like the donation point. Yeah, absolutely. That it's not just gone in a landfill, that there is actually a thought put into how else can this help some, like the lineage of it, how will this domino effect and help someone else?
Absolutely. And we take a good chunk of our training with our franchisees to go through those things. We work with them when they onboard to identify those donation points or those folks. We have some that we work with nationally, but really to come together with a plan, because, and again, maybe to be a little bit on the selfish side, there's a tremendous cost savings for us on items that we can donate or, repurpose, because we're not putting them in a landfill. We're not, it's not costing us money to empty or throw those things away. So there's definitely a win-win proposition for the franchise owner, along with the community.
All right, next slide.
Yes. So some of the key advantages, some of the things that make us a little bit different, like I mentioned, it's two unique complementary businesses for one franchise fee. So under one franchise, you're going to have two businesses to operate. And like I said, I love the fact that you have one side that's going to be kind of guaranteed money. It's that contract that the check is going to come every single month. And actually nowadays it's a direct deposit, so you don't have to wait for a check, which is nice. And then on the other side, you have the variable, which is going to be your junk removal. So you can really build a strong foundation with contracts that you're just basically almost an account manager of, that you just have to check in periodically. And then on the other side, you have the business where you're out growing that business every single day, or you're putting somebody on your team in a position to grow that business every day. So we're the only patented junk removal app in the world. So that's a nice change for us. We did get that award in 2019. So we still have about a 20-year runway on that patent as well.
Oh, really?
So,
I'm not well versed in patent licenses and the nuances and.
Well, we were kind of fortunate, as a lot of things with government go slowly. We applied, and it took a couple years for them to give us our final approval. So that benefited us. It gives us a longer runway with the patent now.
Nice.
Those custom built trucks, they're bigger and better. We use a steel body as well. So it's a custom built steel body. That body will probably outlast me. They're ultra strong. And they can be transferred to another truck, when it's time to upgrade. So you don't have to purchase a bed again. You can just transfer it to another vehicle once you get to that point. We've built a great proprietary workforce management program. So what's awesome for the franchisee is they can monitor their team in the field in real time through the app. So the software allows them to see where their trucks are, when they check in at a job site, when they leave a job site, along with pictures and updates on everything they're doing there. And it sounds kind of silly.
Like the wizard behind the curtain, like the
absolutely. Well, what's great is having that real-time view into things. Our support center can check in and see if, hey, you know what, there's room left on the truck. We can squeeze in another job today if someone calls. So we're able to make decisions on the fly because we have great data coming in. And one of the things,
it sounds like this is like a very modernized version of, an old school need that has been around forever and is going to still need to be around in the future. I mean, I love this modernization with the apps.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the things we like to say around the office is it's white collar technology in a blue collar industry, and it's even to the point, and for franchisees or potential franchisees that might be curious about, well, how do I manage my team, or how do I oversee, how do I know what's going on if I'm out marketing all day? That's their glimpse into it. That's kind of their crystal ball. But even to the point where we have, over the years, we've developed checklists and processes and steps for them to go through. So for example, when their team starts their day, they actually have to take a selfie in uniform to get rolling in the morning. So the owner can require that on, basically, hey, when you check in the morning, I want to make sure your shirt's tucked in and you're in a good uniform to get started for the day. And all that gets fed back to their dashboard. Even little things, and it sounds trivial, but when they go and get gas, they have to take a photo of the mileage. They have to take a photo of the gas cap back on the truck, just because years ago, we went through a problem where they forget to put the gas cap back on, and gas caps are like $25. You lose a couple of those. Well, now we got to update it and add a process. So, we've managed through over the years a ton of things that have come up so that we can build them into the flow in the day for the franchisee and their team. And being that it's proprietary and it's ours, the huge advantage is if there's something that changes or there's something that's specific in their market, we can update it just for that location. And we do it the night before, and the next time they log in, it's there.
So this is the nice thing, having owned like the photography completely on my own, and having owned a franchise systems, these are all the proven concepts and the hiccups that have already been figured out, or you have that parental support, so to speak, of the franchise corporate that, you have all that support built in. I have some clients that ask about, well, you have to pay the royalty fee. Well, yeah, but even if you have your own business, you're going to have to pay someone. Now, if you're going to outsource it, or it's Peter or Paul, who are you going to pay?
Oh, absolutely. And it's, plus also too, is you're part of what you're buying in a franchise is expertise.
Right.
You're buying a leadership team, you're buying, their experience in that market.
Right.
And through all the years, the 12 years that we've been doing this, and partially that's why, we've waited till more recently to really focus on franchising and growing the company that way, is we wanted to work all those bugs out. We wanted to create a system that is perfect, or as close to perfect as we can, for franchisees coming in, so that they don't deal with the headaches or the struggles that a franchisor does when they get started. Because startups in reality, they're not a lot of fun. So when you have,
They've been glamorized though.
Absolutely. And, to have there's nothing wrong with having the scales tipped in your favor by being part of a brand that's done it, for 12 years.
I like how you said worked out the bugs, and I'm noticing down here, murder hornet approved.
Absolutely.
Do you guys have a sense of humor over there?
just a little bit. We like to really, we love what we do. And part of it is the culture that our founders have put in place. It's funny is, when you go and look at some of our Yelp reviews as a company and, locations, we get notes all the time is, well, your guys came and picked up all this stuff and they had a smile on their face the whole time. How do you get those guys to love what they do so much? And a lot of it just starts with culture and setting the precedent. And, part of it is having two founders that kind of bootstrap the business to get started. They've worked the trucks themselves. Even our business consultants that work with our franchisees have to humble themselves a little bit and work on a truck for a few months before they're able to step in and start helping franchisees. And, there is something to be said about, getting out there and doing it yourself. I myself have been on the truck, with them and learn the business with them. And it makes me a heck of a lot more effective and have a true appreciation of the work that our teams do every day. And, our support center is the same way. They're very encouraging. They're going to work with your teams. They're going to work with you the same way that they work with the customer. And, for our support center, they view our franchisees as partners and customers.
So what does make a good franchisee? Who do you guys look for?
Sure. So we're really looking for people that have a passion and some energy, people that really just want to be out there and doing better in their community, be active in their community. They're, for a day-to-day operator, we really want somebody that is comfortable, in those business to business situations, talking to folks, being part of a chamber of commerce. We love seeing our trucks in a parade, those.
Oh, that's smart.
Folks that want to be out there in the community and make an impact. But ultimately, we love to have folks that want to work with us, be able to, take their skills from whatever field they were in before and infuse them into this business.
This is a perfect part where it's, well, I can't lift very heavy stuff. You're not going to be doing that as an owner. And should you be?
You should never be doing that. And we actually kind of joke is, one of the ways that you can tell if somebody's struggling or if somebody is destined for failure is if they want to do everything themselves. We have a tremendous amount of resources. We help you, with pretty much every facet of the business. And, there's a written playbook there for you to work with and work with our team. But most importantly with franchisees and ideal franchisees is folks that have that ability to communicate. Folks that can work with us, can talk to us. They're comfortable putting a team together and managing a team. Those things are so critical because, again, you're not buying a sole proprietorship where, you're doing everything yourself. You're going to build a small team, but we want folks that are going to have that culture infused into that team. So people
how many employees do they need? Sorry.
Sure. So to get started, they're going to start out with 2 to 3 employees. If they're going to be in the more of the manager, on-site type role, they would need 2 other employees to work with them.
Okay. All right.
You can go to the
next slide.
Sure.
I probably asked some questions that already covers them.
Oh, no, it's not a problem. Thank you. So it's a business to business model. Really your targeted sales to drive margin. So going out and talking to other businesses. So one of the unique parts of how we do things is a lot of our competitors target solely the residential single family type clients. We tend to skew our model a little bit more towards commercial clients like apartment complexes, multi-unit, even a lot of commercial work. Like we mentioned earlier about COVID. One of the things that's been great for us, and it's unfortunate for some others, but a lot of businesses have shut down. A lot of storefront retail, clothing stores and things like that. Well, those opportunities for us are those landlords need to get those units cleaned out. They need to get stuff taken out and make it available to rent to someone else. So a lot of those opportunities for us are great because we take out like metal racking and, cubicles and office furniture and things like that, which we get paid to remove, but then there's a secondary market we can sell those items on. or
Okay.
scrap metal for those items. So it becomes, a huge win-win for us because we're able to, make money doing one side, but then resell and make more. Plus put it back to good use. So the tech-driven operations, like I mentioned, photo documentation of everything so that, one is it's extremely helpful as an owner for KPI purposes. We can talk through and understand how much time your team is taking on job sites, how the quality of their work is without an owner physically having to be there. We do have those existing contracts available. We have operation support available to the team as well. So your team is a phone call, email, text away from getting the help that they need. So as a franchise owner, you're not always going to have to be the number one point of contact for your team. So if there's a operational question, at 8:00 at night, there's somebody in our call center that can help your worker. So it's not necessarily everything has to go through you, but you'll have transparency into every communication we have with your team as well. We have a ton of those national apartment relationships that help your local sales efforts. And then we do also have those waste consultant leads that come in periodically for us.
Okay.
We have some of our, on the valet trash side, we have some contracts, we have a contract outside of Portland, Oregon, that we have physically never stepped foot on that property. And we got that through a waste consultant lead. We blind bidded the process. We hired a contractor out there to do the work and never physically stepped foot on property. And that's kind of the depth and breadth of that type of industry, that there is a need for it, that they don't need you to physically go out there and look at it. We get a floor plan, we get information, and we put a bid together for them.
Wow. Okay. Next contract. You've got that word in my head.
I would like some contract.
There you go.
So like I showed you, and this is just kind of a depiction of the size difference.
I love the side by side.
We like
My
to.
truck's bigger than your truck. If this is the boys in the sandbox.
Exactly. We do like this, we do like to say sometimes that, we could give them a ride if they ever get stuck. we can fit them in the back and keep going. But the one nice thing is with the size component is, creates a lot more revenue opportunities. One, our trucks can stay on the road a lot longer. So we're having to dump and empty a lot less. The other part is a lot of the larger, those commercial jobs, some of those contractor jobs, we're able to fill up a truck and get it all done in one shot versus they're going to have to come back or send multiple trucks. So when you start tying up resources, start tying up trucks, again, every minute your truck is on the road or it's not, generating revenue, it's generating expense. So being able to do those things and operate that way saves us a ton.
Nice. All right. Next slide. Oh.
Next slide, please. And this is just, it's a kind of an exhaustive list, but it's not all inclusive. But this is just some of the clients that are out there and some of the clients that we target.
It's a lot.
It really is.
It's not limited. I mean,
it really is. And it does go, there's a lot of opportunities. Like, for example, if you've had a refrigerator or an appliance, go, and the company says, well, we can't get rid of it. We'll give you a new one, but we're not going to take out the old one.
I love those little nuances in that kind of situation.
It's like, who do you call? So we do target a lot of those appliance repair companies in our marketing efforts to go out and say, hey, tell you what, give out our card and, we'll sell, we'll give you a cut on the scrap or do something to work with them. So a lot of those things can be done. And there's other industries that are phenomenal that, even in franchising that we work with, like disaster recovery. People have unfortunate events, they have a flood, they have all that carpet and all that stuff they have to get rid of. A lot of times the town won't take it or the city won't take it. So they need somebody to get rid of those items. And one question that we always get, and I get it a lot with candidates is, well, my town allows you to throw out bulk items periodically, which a lot of towns do.
Yeah.
But do you want to carry it to your sidewalk or to your curb to get rid of it? Do you have that capacity? We do, a lot of our clients, you're not going to want to drag your old refrigerator through your house outside and scratch up your walls and your
Sounds
floor.
like a good Saturday afternoon, doesn't it?
Exactly. And, when you could call a company like us and for, probably, most likely under $200, have somebody come in, take that out, and probably you'll find some other things that you want to get rid of as well. And Real estate offices are another one, and a lot of the property managers or realtors or investors are picking up properties that,
Yeah.
need some work. And, even one of the other parts with dumpsters and things like that. I don't know about you, but I have a HOA where I live, and I have to jump through every hoop imaginable if I wanted to put a dumpster in my driveway.
Uh-huh.
So the notion of with this service is they stage items in a garage or a carport or backyard. They schedule the time. We roll up, we back in, our team gets out, puts everything on the truck, saves them a labor cost, and nobody even knew we were there. So a lot of folks like to do renovation without all the neighbors knowing what's going on in their house. So it allows us to back in and get out of there in 15, 20 minutes versus a permanent, multi-day or multi-week fixture sitting in their driveway.
Nice. Okay. All right. Next slide.
Yes. Some of the items that we collect, just, again, not an exhaustive list, but, things that you might not think of, like landscape debris. Down in Florida, hot tubs is a big one. Because what the heck do you do with those things when they don't work anymore? Because they're just disgusting. But
Oh my God.
and
I love the hot tubs.
Oh yeah,
I'm laughing because my dad gets in the hot tub every single night. I don't care if it's January. I don't care if it's August. And when I saw that, I just thought my mother's going to call you guys and have you get rid of it with him in it. Probably.
we do get some of those calls, but it's funny is, there's things that you learn as you go through, like hot tubs, for example, and hopefully your father doesn't encounter it. The parts for them tend to go out of existence pretty quickly. So they kind of push people into buying upgrades or new ones when something breaks. It's like, hey, we can replace the motor. It's $1,000, or I can put you in a new one for this. Hot tub salesmen are probably worse than car salesmen in that sense. They're always trying to get you into something better, probably something you can't afford.
That's what my dad should do. Looking through this list, what I'm kind of sensing is there really isn't a seasonality.
Not at all. We work 12 months a year. We're always busy.
Okay.
One of the things that is a strange one that I never thought of until, and I've lived in apartments, but Christmas trees. So we have a lot of our apartment complexes. We'll contract with them to pick up Christmas trees, where we'll come once a week and pick them up. Because what typically happens is, especially in the north, is you throw your Christmas tree out, it sits next to the dumpster, you get the wind, all of a sudden it's across the parking lot, scratches the car. So we're able to say, hey, we're going to come in a couple times a week and just throw them on the truck and get them out. And most of those we're able to have ground down into mulch and everything else. So we don't even cost us anything to get rid of them.
Oh, look at you guys.
But some of those larger items too, scrap metal we love just because you can resell it by the pound. So people have metals and other appliances and things lying around. We can take them to a scrap yard and get rid of them. Construction of debris, different things on here. Probably the number one most popular thing that we see though is mattresses. Most people don't take them with them when they move because they're just a pain to move. So they typically get left behind.
I always thought that was fun. It was more of a balancing workout. It was like trying to get them up the steps, and then the fights that ensued and the name calling.
Oh, absolutely. And that's, they are kind of miserable to move. And one of the things that we see with that is a lot of also furniture companies don't take out the old mattress like they did, 10, 15 years ago. There's some bio issues that go along with mattresses that, I'd rather not think about.
That's a whole nother webinar.
Yeah. So, folks are, that's one of those items that, I'd say, probably, in the course of the year, we're probably out of our corporate location, we're probably picking up, 5,000+ mattresses a year.
Oh,
as crazy as that sounds. It's
All
usually
right.
a handful a day.
Okay, next slide.
As I mentioned earlier, business having a purpose. So being able to impact the environment and the community, helping folks in need. So we're able to take a lot of the items we get and recycle them. So find another
Except the
life,
mattress.
except for the mattresses, thankfully. But a lot of things like furniture, a lot of things like, dressers and, bed frames and things like that, we're able to go to the Goodwills, the Salvation Armies, or the Habitat for Humanities and donate those items.
Yeah, this is important. And I think this adds more of that human factor to just the business. obviously a pandemic proof essential, whatever you want to call it, or the coin term is now that's so popular, but something that goes through the season, something that's essential, something that you're not going to see the huge fluctuations in, depending upon the economy and what have you, or the negative dips with the economy, but something that does, a company that looks for the good too and how they can help, because I think that's always important to have that, the care for the community.
Absolutely. And it gives us the ability to, with a lot of our customers, to offer them and say, hey, a lot of these things look donatable. If we go to
Yeah.
Goodwill, we'll send them a receipt for the donation right off. And some customers don't care, and that stays on our side. But being able to do some good, being
Yeah.
able to help out. We actually ran into in a couple markets this year in particular that Salvation Army and Goodwill, because of COVID, weren't going out and collecting themselves, but they would take donations at locations from reputable companies that they've worked with in the past. So they actually were, in some markets, were referring us as the company, hey, if you want your stuff picked up, there might be a fee, but here's the company that can do it, just because they weren't physically going out and doing as much as they were in the past. So for that side, it's been great for us. Repurpose or resell is another piece that's great. There's also the opportunity, and we pass a lot of that on to our teams, is if there's items that can be resold. So for example, like Facebook Marketplace or Let It Go or some of those other sites, we come across things often that, one man's trash is another man's treasure, where, we'll pick up, say, a lawnmower and somebody's getting rid of it and it works, we can list it and sell it and make a little bit of extra money on that. The nice part is on the repurpose or resell side, as long as it's not scrap metal, anything that's they're reselling through like Let It Go or Facebook Marketplace or like a Craigslist, we don't charge royalty on it. So the franchisee has an additional source of revenue that is kind of theirs. And we do in some of our markets. We actually we have like one of our team captains in some of in a couple of the markets will be responsible for that stuff, and it's kind of a side job for him. And he'll clean stuff up and handle the sales process. I didn't really mention before, but for us, we operate our business out of a self-storage unit typically. So it's a lower overhead, a lower cost structure, but also it gives them a point that they can sell those items out of, so people aren't going to an office location or home.
So where do people mostly keep the larger truck that you pointed out in your side by side?
Sure. So what we do is we actually will have our franchisees rent a self-storage unit, usually a 10 by 20. And then most of those will find a self-storage company, usually like an Extra Space or Public Storage. They'll have on-site parking that you can rent as well. So usually their parking spot, you can fit 2 trucks in. So what we're typically looking at, for most markets, you're still a little bit under $500 a month in rent and overhead. And we'll put a lockbox on the storage unit. So the team goes in the morning, unlocks the unit, goes in, gets their device. Everything works off of a smartphone for the team. All their routing, all their jobs, all their pictures, everything goes through that. And they'll basically start there, close up the unit, take the truck, come back. Any items that maybe they don't want to get rid of or could donate later or resell, they'll leave in the storage unit. So we're not taking it to a dump. We're not emptying it. So it saves us on some of those costs as well. Okay. But we really want to try to keep a very streamlined and light overhead, especially as they ramp up. We don't really have, and one thing I like about, again, the mindset of the founders is we really don't have any expenses or overhead that are trivial. Pretty much whatever is there is a necessity.
Okay. That's important. I know there's a slide coming up here that will talk about the investment level. So that is coming up here, but tell us about your care part.
Sure. So our culture is CARE, and it's an acronym for convenience, affordable, reliable, environmental responsibility. So it's really how we operate, and we actually call our support center in Tampa the Care Center. And if you get a chance to visit our offices, that these terms and this acronym is plastered on every wall in our building. And even if you see in our logo, Accelerated Waste Solutions, underneath it says problem solved. And that's really our mantra as a brand and as a company is there's a solution for everything that's out there. It's just our job to find it. So customers, from a convenience standpoint, giving them every opportunity to find us and use us and make their life easier in booking and getting work done in this industry. Affordability, being able to use our truck size to leverage that savings to a customer. So to cut our operating costs a little bit, we can pass on some of those savings to a customer. Reliability, giving that 360 view for the customer. So they're going to get a report or an invoice with pictures of everything that was done that day at their home. I mean, even to the point where we'll show a picture of their items removed and we've either swept it out or, leaf blew it away so that it's clean and neat, so that we leave the job site in a much better place than when we got there. And the environmental responsibility, we teach and we really push our teams to donate or identify as many things that we can recycle as we haul away. Internally, we have our own metrics and goals that we monitor closely to try to keep those numbers high. Because one, like I mentioned, there's a little, business financial incentive for us to do that, but there's also that feel good side of the business,
Right.
being able to help people, to take somebody's desk that they're not using and donate it and have that end up in someone else's home so, their kid can do homework. Those types of things are really, valuable and, adds a nice feel good piece to a business where, you're making money.
Junk with a heart.
Absolutely.
All right, next slide here. Of course, doesn't want to work. All right. So the territories.
Sure. From a territory perspective, we're typically looking at 250,000 plus residents in a territory. We also do look at the multi-unit opportunity there as well, because again, we are looking for, the right market for both brands so that there's enough multi-unit for our doorstep details side of the business for valet trash. And then on the junk side, that there's enough residences there to be popular. What we do, as we mentioned earlier, we don't shy away from competition. We're in Tampa, Florida, which is probably the most competitive trash market in the country. I have no idea why, but it just is.
How would you know? Like, who knows that fact?
And, the irony is us and actually a couple of our competitors were all founded in Tampa. So
really?
We compete with each other daily. So we get to see, what everybody else does. And we also get to see how we do it better. So It's given us an opportunity to look at our competition, look at, ways that we can, kind of insulate ourselves and find little niches. Our co-founder Sherrod likes to say the riches are in the niches, and always looking for that little niche piece of the business that we can own and take from someone else. So, we want to put folks on a great, strong standing for that market. We do also offer discounts for veterans. We also offer discounts for multi-unit operators. So folks that buy multiple territories, they're going to save a little bit on subsequent territory franchise fees.
Okay. Is that the next slide? Oh, no. Okay. So you had talked about those existing contracts with the valet trash and how that can work in with territories that are available for accelerated waste.
Yes. So we have, we're operating in 20 states currently, and we have about 90-ish existing contracts. That number changes almost every week, but franchisees that buy a market or buy a territory in those markets, we offer them the opportunity to purchase the existing contract. So what we're looking for mostly is about 50% of the annual gross revenue of that contract. So what that helps is somebody walking in to a new market, they can have cash flow with, solid cash flow immediately or within a couple months. So being able to walk in, have a relationship, will tap you into that relationship. But then you also have a great sales piece where one, you're generating revenue, but two, now you have a talking point going out talking about that you already operate or working with a property management company in that market. So there's a ton of markets out there that there's phenomenal opportunities from day one to really start the business off on a strong footing.
Okay, nice.
So from a team structure standpoint, one of the things we talked a little bit about is, having a low head count, and every position that we hire and we have you'll have on your teams are revenue generating positions. So there's not a lot of fluff. Basically for a semi-absentee or an investor candidate, it's really easy to just bring on an operations manager. So in a day-to-day role, franchisee will usually operate or fall into that operations manager role. And they'll have a driver and a technician that operate the truck on one side. And then you're going to have a 1099 contractor. We call them a valet trash porter. that you'll hire when you have or bring on when you have the valet contracts in place. So that piece doesn't really take effect until you have those contracts in place. But ultimately, if a franchisee wants to be semi-absentee, they can hire an operations manager. It's not a very high salary position. It's a position that we help out with training. They're going to be more or less overseeing the team, but handling a lot of the B2B marketing side. In an ideal world, a semi-absentee franchisee will have that person do a lot of the introductions, where the franchisee will take more of the high-level meetings, kind of the founder or the CEO to CEO type conversations and calls, go to the golf tournament for the Chamber of Commerce, do those types of things that they're more of an executive type role.
Okay.
Versus, getting their hands dirty every day. We want them to understand everything that goes on in the truck, so they hire the right folks and the right people to operate. But at the end of the day, they shouldn't be touching the truck. They should be communicating with customers and finding new ones and ensuring that customer service is at a high level.
Okay. So if somebody owns more than one territory, would you have one ops manager for two territories, and that's a way of scaling the business?
Absolutely. An ops manager can handle a couple markets.
Okay.
Depending on their skill set, easily, two is well within their scope. I would say if you have somebody that's done two, adding a third is not going to be a big challenge for them. Yeah. And you might just create like supervisor positions below.
Okay.
If you decided to, and what we do is we'll really help you kind of right size your organization as you expand and grow. So we'll go through with you if that's your ultimate goal is to own a market and build your little empire. We'll work through kind of what the org chart is going to look like specifically for you. Once we understand who you have and their skill sets, we can really help you adjust and make sure you have the right people in the right places.
Okay. A day in the life.
So a day in the life of the owner, as kind of like I touched on in the last slide, really managing the customer experience. So our support center really helps you streamline and supports your day-to-day operations. Using technology and using our expertise, but really business relationship building, getting out and talking to folks, building even, those relationships with those donation points, going out and, meeting with, people that own property managers or real estate agents. Some of it I kind of say is you're also going to be, going to a real estate office and dropping off coffee and donuts and some business cards. So, being out there and just, enjoying being around people is important. Managing the customer experience, so follow-ups, making sure your customers are happy. You'd be a little bit of that account manager where you're popping in just to make sure they're happy with your service. Our support center does follow up with our jobs and try to ask people to fill out reviews and things like that. So you do have that first level, and the owner would just be that second level. Targeted marketing. So targeted marketing, that's going to hit those apartment complexes, storage facilities, realtors, contractors, the referral programs. Really just, we're going to help you identify and build that marketing strategy. And also too, what we're doing on the marketing side is, if your truck is, if you have a gap in jobs, well, we're going to have a marketing plan that your driver, your team is going to go to. And that might be go to a storage unit and drop off some flyers. So if they're not actually picking up junk jobs, we have marketing activities for them to be doing in the field as well. So, you're making sure that you're maximizing, the labor that you have out there.
Sounds like the old school on the road sales days.
It is, and to be honest though, is, for an owner, there's an opportunity if you're semi-absentee to, hire like more of a supervisor. If you can put in, 20 hours a week or 15 hours a week, we can definitely carve out a role that'll work for you, and just be hyper focused and hyper targeted. It's a lot of it is how effective people are with their time. So I know people that can work 60 hours a week and get less done than somebody that works 10. So if you're committed and you want to do this, we can build a strategy and build a plan that.
What percentage would you say of owners or current franchisees are semi-absentee versus owner operator?
So right now we have more that are leaning towards semi-absentee or manager driven. Even, our franchisees that are doing the marketing side have somebody that's doing more of the operations management piece. Mm-hmm. So But I will say, and I'm sure you see this with clients that you work with, everybody's eventual goal is to be absentee. One of the things that we take to heart too is that, at the end of the day, people are looking at a business because, one, they want a better quality of life. So one thing with,
More
I always
control over their future.
absolutely, and I always encourage franchisees is you can easily turn your franchise into a job and build the same characteristics you didn't like about your old job if you don't hire the right people and surround yourself with a team. You can make a franchise feel as miserable as your job did if you don't take the right steps and don't execute and follow the system. So putting the right people in place is going to, that's your independence and your freedom is that much closer when you put the right people in place.
Right. Okay. Common questions. Well, I know that we had talked about, I don't know if we skipped over a slide here. There was something I thought I saw about what the investment level is, but if we could talk about that for a minute. What's the range of investment level here?
Sure. So the investment range, yeah, I probably had it in there. So typically what we're looking at, we run, right now we're running the franchise fees are $49.9 for both brands together.
Okay.
So it's a $49.9 franchise fee. When you start to look at like our overall investment, we're typically about 135 to 288. The 288 number seems really high, and that's basically because we are disclosing if they were to purchase the vehicle cash. So our truck is about 65,000. Okay. So we do have to disclose if somebody was to purchase it. So we do give that full range with a little bit of padding on the high side.
Okay.
Typically what we're typically working for our trucks, for example, we have a phenomenal leasing program that they can lease. It's a track lease, unlimited mileage. Or we work with Isuzu directly. So we're able to work with them on a finance platform or finance plan for the truck. That typically is keeping them under $1,000 a month, roughly, for the truck. Okay. So that drops that investment range down quite a bit. Yeah. So typically coming in, to be set up for success is usually in that 150 to 175 range.
Okay. And then the most popular question, we waited to the end, but how much can someone make?
So one of the things, as you know, with the FTC, we are a little bit regulated in that. So we do refer folks back to our FDD and disclosure document. But essentially,
they can get through you once they begin an investigation.
Exactly. And as we go through that process, one of the things that we do is we do have a budget and a planning worksheet that we'll go through with the franchisees or prospective franchisees so they can understand what their expenses look like. Plus, we'll also obviously put them in touch with our existing franchisees who can give them some really good insight into their periods of starting and when they get to that break even and when they get to that profitability. And I think that's one of the big things as well is you're never going to be able to, FDD is going to be a one-dimensional or a budget worksheet is going to be one-dimensional. Talking with some of the existing owners, we'll give you more of a three-dimensional view of it just because, they can give you a better view of their timeline. Mm-hmm. So how the ramp-up process has gone, that type of stuff is really, really critical and really important. One of the big advantages that we do have, which, again, could speed up that process is having some of those existing contracts in those markets where somebody could come in and, have some revenue, pretty much the day they open the doors.
Okay. So if anyone who's watching this does have an interest in learning more and speaking with Todd, reach out with me, the website, and then book online. You can schedule a casual call with me and you can mention the Accelerated Waste brand and we'll get you started. We'll have you fill out the paperwork and start learning more about Accelerated Waste. Thank you for being on today, Todd.
Thanks so much. Thank you, everybody, for taking the time to listen.